This chapter begins with Lucas Trauman, our protagonist 4,000 years ago, when he is seen fighting single-handedly against a horde of demonic beings. The great demons cannot believe there is a human being who can kill them so easily. The demons demand our protagonist named out. The protagonist tells the demons he is the apostle of justice who stands up against the horde of evil that destroyed his world and humanity's strongest 9-star great mage, Lucas Trauman. The protege tells the demons he is bored, which is why he decided to destroy them and save the world. The demons don't believe a petty human can defeat them. They believe it's impossible for a human to rival them. Our protagonist then launches an attack, and the demons are easily dispatched. He then warns the demons not to underestimate humans, as not all humans are weak links, as the demons believe. Shortly after, our protagonist hears a dark ominous voice. The voice says, "Your ego is quite extreme." Lucas Trauman, then the mysterious being, releases its powerful magical energy, which surprises Lucas. This enigmatic being is the first to instill fear in the great Lucas Trauman. The being known as God appears in front of our protege, and he tells Lucas that we are the laws of the world and the existence that manages chaos. God tells Lucas, our protagonist, that he is too powerful for this world, and his actions have disturbed the balance of the world and will no longer be tolerated. Lucas angrily replies that there are no laws and order in this world because the world is in a state of destruction. God tells our scientist that he has far surpassed the average human, but he is still just a human at the end of the day, and we see God grab him. Lucas is unable to use his mana and feels powerless. God replies this is the sin of opposing God and that which is not allowed to humans. And then God condemns our protagonist to eternity in the void of darkness until he regrets his actions. In another world, we see a bunch of school kids bullying a royal child. The kids are trying to rob the third son of the Blake house since he is from a wealthy and famous family. The kids say the third son of the Blake house should be ashamed of himself because he is trash unlike his respectable siblings who have all made a name for themselves. He is sadly the weakest and most useless student in the Academy's history despite coming from a famous and wealthy family. The bully can't believe he is still alive after taking such a beating from him. He gets angry and continues smashing the third son of the Blake family in the face as much as he can. He finally begs them to stop, but sadly, they continue. The bullies then leave him in a pile of blood, and tell the third son that they will come back tomorrow to beat him up again. The kid wishes he was stronger like his siblings. He hates being weak and getting bullied every day. A few thousand years later, we are taken back to our protagonist who has been imprisoned in the void for thousands of years. The protagonist can't believe he is feeling worse and starts to question himself, feeling sorry for himself that he's such a weak human compared to the demigod. Then we are taken back to Frey Blake, where his father is seen banishing him from the kingdom for being such a pathetic weakling and bringing shame to the great Blake family. The father says the Blake house cannot accept individuals who are incapable of getting stronger and tells Frey to never speak to or see him again as he is dead to him from now on. After Frey Blake was exiled by his family for being the weakest human in the Academy. Shortly after, he is seen attempting suicide. Then we are taken back to our protagonist. God is seen attempting to break Lucas' will after thousands of years. But Lucas is still hanging out and hasn't lost his will to exact vengeance on the demigod. What is God's order? Screams the protagonist. Do you actually fancy this absurd and illogical world that much to the demigod? He asks, and begins to understand why the world is so hideous and who keeps messing with it. Our prophet promises to take revenge on God for the crimes he has committed against humanity and himself. All of a sudden, Frey Blake, the outcast and failure of the royal family, appears in front of the protagonist. The protagonist then took over the body of Frey and thus escaped the abyss. The world's strongest mage, Lucas Trauman, has become the world's weakest human. You are now me, and I am you, he says. The protagonist promises to take revenge on the demigod one day. The protagonist begins training Frey Blake's body, but he cannot use all his powers in Blake's body because he is the weakest human. However, to fight against the demigod, he must recover his original strength no matter what. No, he needs to be even stronger than he was originally. In a short amount of time, the protagonist reached 5 stars. The protagonist then appears at the school where Frey Blake was bullied all his life. The bully thinks that Frey Blake didn't commit suicide and is alive when, in fact, he did die, but his body was taken over by Lucas Trauman, the world's strongest mage and our protagonist. The bully decides to pick a fight with our protagonist. The protagonist blasts the bully to the wall with an attack. So embarrassing. Why did I do that to a child? Frey, this is a special service for you. I am humanity's strongest great mage. The protagonist, Lucas Thorman, says in his head. Next, we are shown the protagonist in class being asked a question by the professor, who hates him. The professor demands that the protagonist answer the question or face dire consequences. Name 3 items that were used by the magic warrior Kasajan, the professor says. Lucky for us, the protagonist and Kasajan used to be friends back in the day, as we are shown a flashback of them from 4,000 years ago hanging out and being good friends to each other. The protagonist can't believe his old friend, who couldn't do anything but train, has become famous. A student who thinks the professor is in trouble steps in to help him out and tells the professor he is being rude and irresponsible. The professor gets angry and tries to scare the student. Then the protagonist helps her out and answers the questions. From this moment these two become friends with each other. The professor and everyone in the class can't believe the protagonist got all the answers correctly. The professor in his head questions whether this is the same Frey Blake who was named the weakest and most stupid magician in the academy. As nobody knows that Frey Blake's body was taken over by Lucas Trauman, our protagonist. The protagonist gets hungry and asks to leave the classroom. The professor, still in shock, wonders how our protagonist knows about history events that happened 4,000 years ago. The professor declares class is over and our protagonist, who is extremely hungry, rushes to find food. Later he is stopped by the woman who helped him earlier. She can't believe he ignored her, so she follows him. After a while the protagonist gets angry and asks, "Why are you following me?" She answers saying she wants to have lunch with him. So they decide to eat together. She can't believe that her protagonist has the appetite as big as an elephant, or should I say monkey d. Luffy hee. She asks the protagonist how is so knowledgeable about the Light Ages. The Light Ages was a time when the 4 great mage masters lived in the world, as it was the era in history when magecraft was the most advanced and shone bright. The protagonist can't believe that magecraft doesn't evolve in 4,000 years and instead everyone has become weaker today. He starts to think the demigod who imprisoned him is responsible. She tells the protagonist that the 4 great masters were the warrior king Kasajan, the great mage Schweitzer Wilsman, the black witch Iris Fist founder, and Finley, the greatest of them all, the man hailed as the strongest mage and the man she aspires to rival, Lucas Trauman, our protagonist. She starts to praise Lucas Trauman and says she would marry him if he was alive today, not knowing Hess standing right in front of her just in Frey Blake's body instead. The protagonist starts to laugh that she's even thinking of marrying him, as she is still a child and doesn't see her in that way. She is later confused and asks she wasn't speaking about him, not knowing our protagonist is actually Lucas Trauman. The other classmates can't believe the great Isabel is eating lunch with the protagonist and starts to get jealous. They get jealous and question why the proud Isabel, who is top of the class, is chasing after the protagonist and not giving the others a chance with her instead. Even the infamous David gets rejected every day. Isabel asks the protagonist to teach her the battling training method that only he knows about. He asks what level she is at and she replies she's a 3-star. The protagonist is impressed she is already a 3-star at her young age. After he is finished eating, Isabel asks the protagonist what kind of method is battling. He replies that she should read books to become stronger. He says that he knows so much about 4,000 years ago because he has experience, not knowledge, which leaves Isabel speechless. She wonders just who is our protagonist. Really, if you enjoyed the video and would like a part 2, comment below. And like the video please. Thank you so much for watching. Love you all so much and have a nice day everyone.